I would encourage anyone that's venturing into this to really find a knowledgeable, solid partner. For us, part of that process was not finding someone who would consult and say, here are the things that you should do, but that would walk side by side with us, not only in defining that in the strategic framework, but in the actual implementation.
Hello, my customer success friends. Irit Eizips here with CSN Practice, the customer success consulting firm. Today, we're going to talk about how to start your customer success program, whether you have a startup or an enterprise company or simply a mid-market company, and really how to crack the code on launching a customer success program successfully. To help me with that, I have two lovely ladies today, both very fierce and have a lot of experience in setting up customer success programs successfully. First is Sandra Cashe, Chief Customer Officer at Veriforce. And my next guest is Irene Lefton, Acting Vice President of Customer Success at EmpInfo, where she has not only set up the customer success program in that startup, but multiple startups to date. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone, subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the great videos that we produce on customer success. Can you share with the audience what was the situation at your organization just before you started building out customer success? And what are some of the challenges that the program was aimed to solve? Hey, Irene, from your experience, you usually start this at a startup, so you kind of get a clean slate. Yet, what propelled your CEO to say, hey, come build this for me?
Well, I've had several different build outs at startups, but I'm going to use one example. It was a security company I worked for, and there was no customer success at all. There was a support team that reported into engineering that was reactive, and they were starting to experience some unexpected churn. So the board actually insisted on bringing in a vice president of customer success when they did the C funding round. And that's when I was hired. And the problem was the challenges were very little was known about the customers and what they really saw as a value. It was a sold and done kind of a situation. So it was all about getting to know and engage with the customers and understand the value proposition so that we could actually build a customer journey that would ensure better net retention and understand why they were starting to experience churn.
Yeah, because it sounds like, otherwise, if you just wanted to know why, you could just do some customer interviews, but the company actually wanted you to build the customer success program.
That's right. We wanted to build out the journey, and we needed to understand not only who the customers were because they sold through a partner channel, but also where they thought they were getting value. And actually, when we did the listening tour, went around and talked to a lot of customers, it was very surprising to the product team and the executive team what the customers found valuable. And we actually identified a nascent market area that we weren't even focusing on in our marketing that almost everyone found valuable, but our internal product team thought it was just a byproduct of what they did.
Sandra, and in your situation was completely different. What was the situation like when you got the mandate to build a customer success function? Was it also the executive team or the board that put the pressure on? And if so, what was the challenges that they were trying to solve for?
Veriforce is really a rapidly growing software technology and service company, growing both via acquisition and organic growth. And we have a somewhat complex customer model. So we range from hundreds of hiring clients to thousands of instructors to tens of thousands of contractor companies. So we had elements of customer success, but really it was difficult to get a more comprehensive view of that. Very difficult to manage and measure what was going on with those respective audiences. We had a team and company that really had always prided ourselves in excellent customer service. In fact, ranked really well, high in the industry with regard to customer service, but we had a really reactive model. So while we had elements of customer success, we really needed to move to something more proactive and prescriptive, and that would allow us to scale. So our board and our CEO were very much in favor of adopting a more comprehensive customer success framework organizationally. And that's what we did. We set out on a journey in 2020 to define and develop that program.
And how did you approach this? I mean, no one in your team has ever came from a mature customer success organization. What were the first steps you took in order to start building this program?
Well, the first thing was to really establish customer success as a priority initiative across the company. But as I said, we had very good support for that. Then we researched and selected an outside firm to help us both with strategy and implementation.
How about you, Irene?
I started with a listening tour, and there's always 5 things I try to do when I'm building out a team. The first is listen. The second is build relationships, both with the customers and internally. So I spent a lot of time in the beginning just meeting with people and building my relationships, and then started immediately to map out the customer journey, because that was the purpose of things, and evangelizing the customer success function, getting everybody to understand what it meant and why it was important. And through that, we built the plan and built the organization.
I think the main difference is, Irene, you're coming into an organization that doesn't even have anything. There's no customer success function. There's no other success functions in the organization. Whereas Sandra, you've spent years in this organization. There's a collective tribe knowledge around customers and what they want and what they need. So maybe the need for these listening tour is less of a high priority, whereas having an outside perspective around what is the maturity of the existing motions that you already have to customer service, and where are the gaps around that versus customer success and best practices.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's good. And for steps, I went through kind of what we did, which was to conduct the assessment and benchmark really where we were on the customer success maturity curve. And once that was done, we defined the current operating reality and goals and created a plan around the pillars of customer success in our roadmap. And we focused really on the areas of the customer life cycle, CS operations, customer health and risk, customer value, expansion, and advocacy.
And what are some steps that you've taken immediately after the assessment was over?
Well, we identified a lot of areas of opportunity. So one of the first things was then to prioritize which things we were going to tackle first and create that roadmap and assign champions within the organization to lead each of those efforts.
That's great. Irene, you've done your tour, you had a roadmap. Was it easy to get the buy-in for your vision for that roadmap or the budget to execute it, given that it's a startup?
No, actually, it was not easy. And in fact, we never fully finished building it out before I left. What you do is very much the same as what Sandra was talking about, but how it plays out in an early stage company is very different, because we also had our gap analysis and our priorities for the things that we wanted to do and put a plan together. But the evangelism became very, very critical, because we were fighting for much more limited resources and frankly didn't fully have executive buy-in on the roadmap. So it was an uphill battle. I found support where I could. One of the key things we did, though, that was very helpful was install a customer success platform, because we saw immediate internal value by consolidating all of the information in a 360-degree view.
That's awesome. And this really speaks about how do you prove customer success. Sandra, do you find it critical, even for you? I mean, I know you got the buy-in from the executive team and the mandate from the board, but do you still feel like proving value internally is also critical, whether it's to management or cross-functional teams? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that, while we've got a lot of manual tracking that we've put in place as we've built out the framework over the last year, we are now in the final stages of kind of determining that technology stack for 2021, and we'll be implementing a CS platform to help us operationalize and make a number of those key metrics a little easier. We've got lots of great key metrics that do demonstrate value. Now we're going to make those a little less labor intensive to follow.
Absolutely. And in a complex organization, do you find there's specific barriers to get the customer success fully implemented? I mean, it's one thing to come up and say, all right, these are the processes you need, document them, maybe even train the team. What are some of the barriers that you've seen to really get the team fully implement these new processes and even get some of the cross-functional teams enrolled in changing things out and being more customer-centric?
Yeah, probably the biggest barrier that we've faced, like many organizations, are just resource and time constraints. In addition to the growth, we've been working on multiple company integrations, which is a lot of additional work on top of the day-to-day. And then layering in this rather massive customer success initiative on top of it. Time constraints were probably the biggest barrier. And then in addition to that, we're really working on empowering CS operations, its technology platform to help us scale. So we are now, as I said, in the phase of we've selected the partners that we feel are the right ones to move forward with. And then in the beginning of 2021, we'll be implementing that technology.
How about you, Irene? In a small startups, what are some of the barriers?
Well, the executive buy-in was definitely a barrier because of budget, but we did get our platform implemented pretty quickly. And what we had for barriers there was finding the data and getting the data cleaned up. That was a little bit of a barrier, but given that we were small, it was great to have it early because we were able to start off on the right foot. We didn't have a lot of rework and restructuring of existing data sources to try to manage around what I would call the master customer record, which is kind of spread between systems. Some of it's in the financial system, some of it's in the support system, some of it's in the CRM. And then we had health scores and things like that were in our own system. But we wanted to get automation less so to the customers and more so to internal triggers, workflow triggers, to identify actions, because we were just building the team. We had a very small team and we really needed to surface up the critical things internally. So we used the system to be able to do that.
Let's talk a little bit about metrics and KPIs, key performance indicators. Can we leverage team key performance indicators to influence a successful change management for our companies as we launch customer success programs? How much do you use that as a lever, Irene, in just making sure that the team is focused on the right things?
I made friends with the CFO. That's one of the things I always try to do early on into the company because they hold the purse strings. So I really built my relationship there, and we made net revenue retention a corporate goal. 100% of the employees had some part of their compensation tied to our net revenue retention. And so that was a huge thing because then it filtered down into the sales comp plans and everything else within the company. So, the other KPIs that you measure in an early stage are kind of some of the same, but some different. I mean, when you're a 4-year-old or 5-year-old company and your contract cycles are 1, 2, or 3 years, and you're still building your growth, you can't look at churn as much, okay? Because maybe you haven't even had a full cycle on some of your customers to churn. So you can say, oh, we have great net retention because we haven't ever gotten to the renewal date of half of our customers. But you want to look at some activity measures. So that's why we wanted to put the workflows in internally. So we could look at contacts we were making with customers, how often we were engaging with them, number of support tickets that they were logging. Because we were a security company, if they weren't logging support tickets, they probably weren't using us as much. There was an adoption correlation there. When I left that company, we were just about to put in some product telemetry to start to feed us a little bit more information.
That's awesome. And I love how you used KPIs to actually track what we call leading indicators to instead of lagging indicators, because those are the indicators that the team can really control. Sandra, when you work with the board and you meet with them once every few months, what kind of, if you don't mind sharing, what kinds of key performance indicators do you share with the executive team and the board, and what kind of milestones do you celebrate with them?
Yeah, and so we actually have monthly board meetings. We share a lot of information, and some of the key metrics that will be shared at the board level are certainly retention across all of our customer audiences, expansion within existing clients. I mean, that's a key metric for us and a shared objective across all of my team. We've also started including things like our moments of value and testimonials and movement in that arena, as well as customer advocates. We look at client referrals, where our existing clients are helping to bring new business and partnerships to the company. And then we have some of the kind of more standard indicators as well, NPS, CSAT scores, and SLAs.
Having gone through this process, both of you, whether in a large organization that had something or startup starting from a clean slate, what would you recommend to others who are just starting out building a customer success program? Sandra, why don't we start with you?
Well, from my perspective, I mean, we had, again, while we had elements of customer success, and you put it well, a lot of tribal knowledge around our customer relationships and customer needs, we really didn't have expertise in customer success as a methodology and a discipline. So I would encourage anyone that's venturing into this to really find a knowledgeable, solid partner. For us, part of that process was not finding someone who would consult and say, here are the things that you should do, but that would walk side by side with us, not only in defining that in the strategic framework, but in the actual implementation and execution. That was really critical. Also, I highly recommend, different organizations have different resource capabilities, but having someone dedicated on the team that's really going to champion the effort, if one or more persons, but that's really, really critical to driving the process forward. And then also really developing cross-company and cross-team collaboration to avoid any early pitfalls or lack of adoption.
What about you, Irene? For small startups, what would you recommend?
I'm going to start with where Sandra ended, kind of building the relationships and having those peer things is so important, that especially in a small company where people wear so many different hats. And that kind of ties into the evangelism phase. You've really got to continuously, I think every CS leader, half of their job is evangelizing their function, whether it's to the customers, to the board, or to the peers and the other people in the company. But I also think that mapping your customer journey, understanding kind of all your key touch points and where they are today and where you want them to be. So you kind of design and architect and do that gap analysis. That's really critical so that you have that analysis to set your priorities, and understanding and knowing your customer data. What is there? What do you know? Because often you don't know everything you want to know. So what do you know that you can actually start working on? In our case, in the startup, we didn't have product telemetry, which was a real problem, but we did know support tickets, and we could then kind of start to, and talking to some of the engineers and talking to the support team and talking to the product team, we could kind of see, well, if they're not logging tickets, then we know we have a problem because they're not using things, because they should be asking questions about this or that. And so we found our sweet spot there to say, if they're under this number of support tickets, we need to take action. Or if they're over this number of support tickets, we need to take action. And then we set the thresholds for triggers to know when somebody was dropping off or going up. So those were some of the kinds of things that we had to do in the small company environment.
Definitely build a relationship, latch to what you know, leverage what you have. Awesome. Well, ladies, I want to thank you. This is great.
If you enjoyed this session, sign up for our YouTube channel and smash that notification button to get notified for any new customer success videos that we produced out there. I'll see you guys at the next video.